Hi, Facebook friends. Helen Arcantu here, CEO of the YWCA of Northern New Jersey. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and so happy to have some time with you today on this Wednesday. If you're in North Jersey, it is a beautiful day. So I was very happy to come sit outside for this wonderful conversation, and I hope that you're getting a little vitamin D for yourself today also. And, we have another great conversation. Today, we're going to get an opportunity to talk to another wonderful female entrepreneur who is out there, doing, their thing and passionate about their vision and their work. And so grateful that I get to bring it all to you. So today, we'll be talking with Blanche Garcia. Hi, Blanche. Welcome.
Hi, how are you, Helen? Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you could be with us today. For our viewers, Blanche is known as an intuitive designer that breaks the norms when it comes to empathic design practices. Blanche is a creative designer that continues to grow in her industry. She's an award-winning certified interior designer and has over 26 years of experience in the design business. She was also the principal designer for the popular Travel Channel reality series Hotel Impossible for 5 seasons and recently published in Architectural Digest, Apartment Therapy, and Work Design magazine. Her latest book, Empowered Design, is a roadmap to understanding how to create a passionate plan for living. Her belief is that a great design starts inside, and it is holistically connected with what we surround ourselves with. It's the foundation to her work, and who we are is directly connected to creating spaces that support our energy. I love this conversation because it's so connected to some of the other guests that we've had on, in the last few weeks about energy and kind of creating a space in our heads for what we want to accomplish, so it fully makes sense that our space around us needs to support that as well. So this is all like puzzle pieces fitting together for us. um, blanche design Blanche's design firm is B. Garcia Design, which is located in Montclair, New Jersey. She continues to thrive by expanding her clientele and growing her diverse women-only firm, and she doesn't plan on slowing down anytime soon. And so, with that, can you tell us? I mean, I know I just mentioned it in your in your bio that you're an intuitive designer. Um, and that might not be language that people are familiar with. Interior designer is a language that people might be familiar with, but intuitive designer may feel different. Can you talk about that a little bit? What that means and is?
Yeah, I mean, I have always parallel to, actually, not always parallel, but probably somewhere along my journey, I started connecting more to centering myself, purpose-driven living, just, making sure that I felt good in the spaces. And I always felt that I was kind of expressing from my authentic self. And I always wanted to make sure that not only that I ran my business in a very clear and connected way, meaning like I was always thoughtful, I always ran it with integrity. I treated others how I wanted to be treated. I wanted to make sure everybody was heard, not only my employees, but the people that I work with. And that doesn't mean that as an intuitive in running my business that I was a pushover or am a pushover or I'm like, very like granola or like foo-foo. I'm very driven and very directive, and I have boundaries within not only how I run my business, but also within design. There are boundaries, there's things that make sense that work, right? And my job is to communicate that and to guide my clients along the way. But through that process, I always make sure that I'm connected to my authentic self. I'm always checking in with myself, and I'm always making sure I'm checking in with my client and even the project. So that means on a business level that I'm always listening to my inner voice, whether you call it your gut, your intuition, whatever it is. well, as a woman, we have that inherently. And sometimes we think that we have to like mosh all over that and just, run our business in a different way. But we could actually use both sides of our brain and our intuition to kind of guide us to not only answers, directions, how we run, how we charge, that type of thing, right? It's the brain, but also the intuition. And then how that bled over into my design is just making sure that I checked in with my client. So I intuitively always feel out a space visually. I visualize a space. I connect to the space when I'm in it, the energy of it. What does the space want to be? And then when I'm listening to my client, I'm always listening to the things that they don't say as much as they do, meaning that sometimes a lot of people have never checked in with themselves or know what they want. They think they know what they want because they're responding to pictures they see on magazines, their friend's house, or this and that. And they don't understand yet how it applies to their own situation. So sometimes when a client is telling me about what they want, I'll look around and I'll hear sometimes what they need. And sometimes they're not aware of that. So being able to decipher that and kind of dance in between the words and kind of the feeling is really important to me to getting to the solution to their space. And then I'm always checking in with them that even though there's, changes, people's energy, they may feel one way one day or another day. I'm making sure that I've created a framework that kind of like lets the design happen not only organically, but it also happens in a successful manner. So we're always very clear, we're always very user friendly, checking in, that type of thing. So those are the many ways, not only business wise, how I connect to a project and how I run my projects with the clientele. Those are the three ways that I think that it's more of a connection process.
That's so, first of all, it makes so much sense. Logically, it makes a lot of sense. But, I would imagine that what's so powerful about what you just shared, the way that you do your work, is that you not only help your clients create this great space, but you also probably help them kind of create a better confidence in themselves and trusting you know, their gut and their intuition because, we know that most people are not trained, as you said, women are not necessarily encouraged, to follow along in that way. Everything is so, what's the trend? What are the facts? Like everything is so, motivated from these, external factors, that you really are kind of giving them such a tremendous gift because you're focusing on them, really having faith and confidence in themselves and what they're feeling and helping develop that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, listen, what a designer is a luxury, we're not a necessity. And I'm the first one to say that. I'm not for everybody because, people need to pay their bills, they need to feed themselves, things like that. We're for those who really are in a place that they can bring somebody else in as an expert to kind of help and guide them along, to make sure that their space is exactly how they want it to feel. And also, they're going to put a sizable investment in, and they want to make sure that they're making the right decisions, right? Whenever I'm doing something like if I'm buying computers or I'm going on a vacation, I'm calling in a travel agent or I'm calling this. You don't want to spend a ton of money or a sizable investment without kind of knowing where it's going, and especially if it's not your wheelhouse. So, for instance, when we're guiding a client and we're going over space planning, and they're like, well, I always saw it this way. This is the way I want, like the sofa. I want another sofa across. This is how I saw it. So, my job isn't to be like, oh my God, if that's how you feel, let's totally do that. It's like, my job is to explain to you how that works, what you're giving up to make it work that way, and what the other options are. And I'm always going to say something like, I think that that's great and that's one way to do it. But what you're going to be giving up is XYZ. And if you do this, this is more of a collaboration zone. If I add chairs versus sofa, not only that, it creates separation. So if you have friends over, they're not always having to sit right on top of each other. And that's always nice. So if the goal of this room is to create community or connection, and it's not just for you solely, you want to think about how the room is being used and the flow. And so when we talk about that, I'm explaining to them not only the physical and the factual, but I'm explaining to them why the energy and the backup to how that would make people feel, not only them, but other people. Now, if at the end of that conversation, they still want it the way they want it, will then adjust other things accordingly or whatnot. And at the end of the day, it's people living in their own space. From that kind of evolution, we've now released a new service called Conscious Home by BGD. And it kind of takes it a step further now, where I've created and kind of invented 6 archetypes that I pull from when the client chooses this service, to kind of help their space support them in reaching their goals and their dreams, and actually getting past the roadblocks in their life. And so based on a questionnaire that we give them, they kind of we push them into one of the 6 archetypes that would help support that. And not only does it touch on like furnishings and design, but it's 360, and it touches on nutrition, essential oils, crystals they may integrate, mantras, meditation zones, activation zones, relaxation zones. So there's different things, music, that actually support different aspects of their life to help holistically create the space to have a successful and vibrant life.
Well, that sounds incredibly comprehensive and also important. But to your point, that this isn't a service that everybody can and does engage. For those that have never really contemplated using a designer, and you touched on it a little bit, but I just want to make sure that there's clarity for anyone who's listening. Like, what is it that you do in addition to helping everyone connect? Like, concretely, why do folks engage designers? Is it to do like a single room or a part of a room or a whole house or all of the above? I mean, how does it how did the contact and outreach happen for you?
So there is a difference between a designer and a decorator, and a lot of clients come to me not knowing the difference. So if
Mm.
you just have a room and you're like, I want it to just look a little prettier and pick up some pillows and maybe some paint colors and things like that, I always will guide someone towards a decorator. They're going to be a little bit more affordable, and they're really just focused mostly on the aspects of the space, cosmetically for the most part. Where you would call in a designer like myself, and every designer specializes in different things. We happen to specialize in commercial design, hospitality, restaurants, hotels, as well as homes. We mostly do fully flushed out projects, in the sense that it's, if you are doing one room, the room is completely getting transformed. New lighting, recessed lighting, floorings going in, maybe new fireplace. We're building custom millwork like a bar or cabinetry. And we mostly do, for the most part, everything's very bespoke, meaning custom. We do add in retail or like, ready-made items. But we usually will do that enmeshed with other things. And so where a lot of clients call us in, whether it's one space or a whole building or a whole home, it's because they not only need to make sure that everything cohesively connects, meaning one room connects to the other. So you're not walking from room to room going like, oh, wow, what happened here? This is like a weird safari jewel room. And then you go to the other one, it's like Zen coastal. So we're making sure that all the rooms speak to each other design-wise with the selections. We create space plans for everybody. So our client, we would create a space plan, elevations. So elevations are important. They're basically what the walls will look like if you're standing there. So how high a sconce will go on a wall, or where the artwork is placed. You can't get that off of a floor plan. So elevations is what is needed. We draw that up. We also pick out all of the materials into a mood board, and we pick out all the fabrics and paint colors and things like that. But it's the detail too. So for instance, for every sofa that we do, there may be 10 fabrics that go on it, a nail head, a finish, the depth of the seat to accommodate the client. Like, I never do less than a 37-inch depth for a sofa. The fill, does it have a spring mechanism so that it pops back up? The longevity of it. I have a client who's allergic to down. So is it hypoallergenic? When the husband sits down, will the sofa support his neck when he's watching TV? So these are all things that go into that. And then we create a budget that matches everything. So when I do a presentation, we present the design, but the budget. So you want to know how much it costs, every item. And we do it so fully fleshed out that everything is selected. It's not like left up to chance. So it's not like we do a lamp at a time or this at a time. And there are designers that do that. We like to do it all together because I'd say sweet spot is more project management and projects association, so everything is picked out together because I want to know how it's all going to work together. I don't want to pick one thing in a silo and then wonder how the other thing is going to play in.
Yeah, that's so it's so fascinating to hear, and I appreciate you explaining that difference because people may not, naturally understand it. I know I learned listening to you, a little bit more about the nuance myself. So one of the things I think that's so, um, fascinating. Obviously, you've really, we talked about the archetypes. You've talked. I mean, you've developed, a kind of a real philosophy and a real framework for how you do your work. Other people do this work, but yours is so, you've customized it so, and then you evolve to book writing, as well in terms of sharing that. Um, we have entrepreneurs that we work with across, our organization that, may dream about writing a book someday, but, it's a someday thing. How did you get to this idea of what you do and then the idea of writing a book to actually, getting there? What was your path to becoming an author and you know so many times at this point?
So I would say that I'm not an interior designer as much as I'm a creative in this life. I always think we came here and we have so much to share. I don't like being boxed in, and I want to create, and I have a lot of other things that I'd like to create, while I'm here. I'd say I fell in love with reading at a very young age because it was my escapism. I would go to the bookstore or library across the street and I would sit in the aisles and I'd read, and I remember that walking in going like, what life am I going to be enmeshed in now? What story? And I taught myself so many things from reading because I started out in design when I was like 16 years old. There was no real mentorships there. The internet wasn't really around. It was very different. And whenever I tried to like, oh, how do I do this? There wasn't an example, meaning that my mother was a hard worker and she ran her business. She cleaned houses to make sure that she was home for me when I got home. And my mother was very smart and she is very capable, but she wanted to make sure she had a career or a job that she could take care of me because my father had passed when I was young. So she said housekeeping because I could be home for you after you got out of school and all these things and make her schedule. But because of that, I didn't have anybody when I said I wanted to be a designer that was really fully a designer at that age. There were some people who worked at like Ethan Allen, one of her friends, or things like that. So I had to learn everything by reading. So I always knew I wanted to write and when I had something to say. As my business evolved and as I evolved, I remember I was on the show Hotel Impossible for Travel Channel. And I started thinking about how I connect to design and how it empowers me and how it's not just like the visual, like, oh, it's a beautiful picture. And I wanted to write about that. And an interesting story is that at the time I'm on a show, a successful show, and I had publishers that were interested in publishing me, but they wanted me to publish a tabletop design book. And I was like, that's not what I want to do. I want to publish something that is more connecting to how I'm designing. So they said, but you're on a show, like we can't publish anything else. Like you should just publish like a DIY, whatever, because it was just the box that they thought I belonged in. So because I didn't want to publish that type of book, I said, I'm going to self-publish. And I ended up doing it on Amazon myself. And it was mostly because I just wanted to get that. Sometimes you have something to say and you want it out there. And it wasn't about making the book like amazingly famous and making all this money. It was just about getting that thought process out. So for me, it was kind of the tipping point in this type of arena and getting my feet wet and going into more in this intuitive way of connecting to my spaces.
I love that, and I love that. It just was so needing to come out of you that you just took matters into your own hands and self published in that way. It's such a great message for our fellow entrepreneurs in our organization that have contemplated this, that there's many options on how to share your stories. And quite frankly, we know that it's really, and which is why this a platform we have here exists, is that it's the stories that motivate all of us really
Mhm.
much more than almost anything else. It's hearing something else that someone else shared, that clicks for us and then becomes that inspiration, or helps empower us to feel like we can do it too. and not feel so isolated or alone in a thought, or an idea. So that's so wonderful. Um, so I know you mentioned, that you are creative and have lots of things you want to do. What's next for you?
So, Conscious Home is the new baby, the creative baby, and we'll probably start a podcast on that. I'm excited because we have a lot of interesting conversations that, like you, we want to have. And then the next is that, a lot of my clientele that can afford me and can afford these types of services, I didn't want it to just be for them. I wanted it to be for the everyday person who just wants to live more consciously. So we will be creating a website that will have a nice, fully fleshed options for clients to be able to log on and create conscious spaces for themselves. They're in their own way, and also to be able to get on board with one of my designers to do e-design and different things, and have articles and just kind of a hub for this, to be able to find products and things like that. So that would be the next step. And then eventually maybe another book, who knows? But that's kind of where we're at right now. We just moved offices, so we are onboarding, we are growing. I try to keep up with the things that are going on in my head that I want to accomplish. So I try to take it one day at a time.
Yes. Oh, well, we'll be watching. And, for our viewers, you can see that as we've been scrolling, as we've been talking, we have Blanche's TikTok and her Facebook and her Instagram. We also have in the comments here for you that you can go to her website and get much more information about everything that we've talked about. Um, and, thank you so much for inspiring us with your journey, and also making us think a little bit more of, about kind of trusting our gut, if you will, and feeling that we can let that guide us, to a really beautiful place, where we can be happy. So before we leave each other, I have to ask you, right, because we know that there are probably also people watching that might be thinking about starting some kind of makeover or renovation, some kind of project. I mean, we've all been stuck in our house for a few years now because of COVID, and maybe we're looking at our four walls and our bigger space and our office now that we're back in it, whatever the location is, and thinking about launching into a project. You know, what's something that, first timers in this space really should keep in mind, for success?
I would probably say to figure out the scope of what you want to do. What is your project parameters? Like, are you doing one room? Are you doing a kitchen? What are some of the components you think you might need? Then kind of have an idea of a number in your head, because the budget that you have an idea of will drive how much somebody will be able to help you. For instance, a project normally, you'll need about 20% to pay a professional of your project. So understand that there's a certain fee that goes with that. So if you're looking for somebody to just help lightly guide you, and you're really capable of finding your own things and whatnot, then you may just want them to consult with you here and there. And that means you're going to bring stuff to them to approve, to give suggestion. But if you want someone to hold your hand a little bit more and you're going to need more guidance, you're going to need more of your budget to allocate towards that. One of the other things to note is to just find somebody who fits in with you. There's a lot of different options out there. If it's a small project, I would say a decorator is good for you. If it's a medium to large project, like let's say over 20,000 to like a couple 100,000, a designer would be great. But under 20K, under 50K, I'd probably say a decorator is probably better for you. And then time wise, usually a design process takes a few months to pull the design together, about 8 weeks to anywhere to four months. And ordering product will probably take anywhere from 8 weeks to 24 weeks to get product in. So plan accordingly, and plan probably, I'd say 20% of your money and 20% of your time for any changes and mishaps or things that may come up.
Well, those are all good notes to keep in our mind, and I know that you've given us a lot to think about, and I'm looking forward to following you myself. And for our viewers, again, please stay connected to Blanche. And I know, if nothing else, just to see where she goes next. I always love seeing creative minds work, and what comes with what's in there. And I know if you go on her website, you can also see some of the amazing work that she's done also. So it will, also help give you even more information about this conversation when you have that visual to go with it as well. So thank you so much for making the time and helping us, rethink, how we're planning and connecting to these projects. I really do think it's a unique mindset, and it really does connect with so much that we try to share with women that we work with about really trusting themselves, and embracing that, like Dorothy, everything you need is all in you. you know
Well, it's now the time, the silver lining with what happened after COVID is that a lot of us want more life. We want to engage more. We want more out of it. We don't want to be mindlessly just like clocking in and just, so we are wanting to connect more. And that's what I think the silver lining is, especially as women, mothers, non-mothers, fur baby moms, or
Mhm.
whoever we are, is just honoring that and just like doing what feels right. And it's okay to do that. You don't need to actually answer to anybody for that.
Yes, yes, yes. Amen. Definitely, yeah, definitely. We there has to be a silver lining to what we've been through, and that's definitely something that we knew before, but you definitely are rooted in, now for sure after our experience.
Yeah.
For our viewers, again, please stay connected to Blanche. You've got all these great places to, see what she's up to and go check out her work. Please share something you learned today, in your circle. Send it in a text, mention it in a conversation with someone. That's part of why WTV is all about the opportunity for us to be able to share stories and some of these great learnings. And we also encourage you to join us next week. There'll be plenty more YWTV. Stay tuned for some other conversations that are upcoming, and stay connected to our social media and website for other events that we're doing. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks so much, Blanche.
Thank you.